I found out my husband was cheating because he sent the text to the wrong person. Me. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of ordinary that barely leaves an impression. I was sitting in a glass-walled conference room, coffee cooling beside my notebook, half listening to someone talk about quarterly projections. The air smelled faintly of dry erase markers and burnt espresso. My phone buzzed against the table. I glanced down, expecting something harmless, a grocery reminder, a random thought, maybe a question about dinner. Instead, I saw this. Last night was incredible, baby. I can't stop thinking about your hands on me. She's got that conference in Denver next week. Come over Monday night. We'll have the whole place to ourselves. For a moment, my brain refused to accept what my eyes were reading. I stared at the screen, waiting for the words to rearrange themselves into something else, something reasonable. They didn't. Someone across the table asked me a question. I nodded automatically. My lips even curved into something that probably looked like a polite smile. I had no idea what they'd said. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. It was like ice water had been poured straight into my veins, sharp, numbing, eerily calm. Here's the thing. There was no conference in Denver. There never had been. That trip he'd mentioned casually a few days earlier, that was supposed to be a visit to his sister in Phoenix. Or at least that's what he told me. And in that single moment, those words glowing cold and intimate on my screen, I understood something with brutal clarity. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't drunk texting. It was planned, timed, comfortable. I didn't stand up and rush to the bathroom. I didn't text a friend. I didn't rehearse confrontational speeches in my head. I took a screenshot, then another. I backed it up to cloud storage, sent it to my personal email, texted it to myself from a different app, just to be safe. My fingers moved steadily, efficiently. My breathing stayed slow, controlled, like my body had decided panic would be a waste of energy. I typed one sentence back. Interesting message. That was it. No accusation, no question. Just a period at the end. Final, deliberate. Then I stood up, excused myself from the meeting with a calm, professional smile, and walked out as if nothing had happened. My heels clicked softly down the hallway. I got into my car, closed the door, and sat there for a second, hands resting on the steering wheel. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked empty, focused, almost unfamiliar. I started making calls. By the time my husband realized, hours later, that he'd sent that message to the wrong person, my marriage was already in free fall. And I was the only one who understood just how far it was going to drop. Before that text, before the cold clarity and the screenshots, there were 9 years of a life that looked solid from the outside. We met in our late 20s at a mutual friend's birthday dinner, one of those loud, crowded tables where conversations overlap and everyone talks with their hands. He sat across from me, confident without being flashy, listening more than he spoke. When he laughed, it wasn't loud, but it felt deliberate, like he meant it. At the end of the night, he walked me to my car and asked for my number with a steadiness that made me feel chosen, not chased. Dating him felt easy in the beginning. He remembered details, my coffee order, the way I hated driving at night, the story about my childhood dog that I'd only mentioned once. He texted good mornings. He showed up when he said he would. When he introduced me as my girlfriend, there was pride in his voice. We moved in together after a couple of years into a house he'd bought before we married. It made sense at the time. He was established, careful with money. I admired that about him. We talked about the future in long, winding conversations. Kids someday, travel, where we might retire. Not fantasy talk. Practical plans, shared calendars, joint decisions. Marriage didn't change much on the surface. If anything, it felt calmer, settled. We hosted dinners, argued occasionally about stupid things. Laundry, whose turn it was to buy groceries, but nothing that felt like a warning sign. No screaming matches, no slammed doors. He worked hard. I respected that. I worked hard too. Our routines interlocked neatly, like puzzle pieces we'd learned how to align. Sunday mornings meant coffee on the couch. Weeknights meant a show we saved just for us. We shared passwords, inside jokes, the kind of shorthand couples build over years. Looking back now, I can admit there were small shifts. Late nights explained away as work. A phone turned face down more often. A certain distance in his touch that I chalked up to stress. When I asked if everything was okay, he always said yes. And I believed him because trusting him had become muscle memory. His family liked me. His parents welcomed me without reservation. always asking when we'd visit next. His sister texted me directly. I thought that meant something, that being woven into his life so completely made us safe. I never suspected another woman. Not once. Infidelity belonged to other people's stories. People who were careless or unhappy or dramatic. We weren't any of those things. Or so I thought. If you had asked me the night before that text whether my marriage was in danger, I would have laughed. Not because we were perfect, but because we were real, built, tested by time. That's the part that hurts the most, even now. Not just that he cheated, but that he did it from inside a life we built carefully, patiently, together, while looking me in the eye every morning and asking what I wanted for dinner. The warning signs didn't arrive as alarms. They slipped in quietly, disguised as normal life. It started with timing. He began coming home later than usual. Nothing dramatic, just 30 minutes here, an hour there. When I asked, he said work was busy. Deadlines. Office politics. I nodded because that explanation fit neatly into the man I thought I knew. Then there was the phone. At first, it was subtle, a slight angle of the screen when he texted, notifications silenced more often. His phone no longer left casually on the kitchen counter the way it used to. When it buzzed, he checked it immediately, too immediately, then slipped it into his pocket like the moment had passed. I noticed. Of course I did. But I also told myself a story. He's stressed. He's tired. You're reading too much into it. There were nights he felt distant in bed, his body present, but his mind somewhere else. When I reached for him, sometimes he responded, sometimes he didn't. On the nights he did, there was an urgency that felt unfamiliar, less intimacy, more distraction, like he was proving something to himself. Once I asked gently, "Are we okay?" He didn't hesitate. "Of course we are." That immediate answer should have worried me more than it did. Another time, I mentioned a weekend away, just the two of us. He said, "Let's see how work looks," without meeting my eyes. I felt a flicker of something then, a small, sharp discomfort in my chest, but I swallowed it. Marriage teaches you to compromise, to assume good intent, to smooth over small frictions instead of treating them like cracks. I became quieter about my doubts. I didn't want to be the woman who nagged. I didn't want to invent problems that didn't exist. And deep down, I trusted him. Trust doesn't vanish all at once. It erodes slowly, grain by grain, until one day you realize the foundation is thinner than you thought. Looking back, the biggest red flag wasn't what he did. It was how normal everything still felt. We still ate dinner together, still talked about work, still laughed at the same shows. He still kissed me goodbye in the mornings, still said love you without hesitation. That's what made it dangerous, because betrayal doesn't always announce itself with cruelty. Sometimes it hides inside routine, wearing the mask of stability. The night before the text, nothing felt off. We went to bed at the usual time. He brushed his teeth beside me. I remember watching him in the mirror, thinking how familiar his face looked, how many versions of this moment we'd lived through together. I had no idea that while I was planning my week, he was planning his. And that somewhere between those two plans, I no longer existed in the way I thought I did. The moment didn't explode. It unfolded. After I sent that single reply, interesting message, I didn't wait for a response. I didn't sit in my car shaking or staring into space. I turned the key, pulled out of the parking lot, and drove with a focus that surprised me. My mind had narrowed to a clean, efficient line. Protect yourself first. I made the first call while stopped at a red light. Greg's name came from a coworker who'd gone through a brutal divorce a few years earlier. I left a voicemail, calm, brief, saying I needed to consult about an urgent marital matter. His paralegal called me back within minutes. They had an opening that afternoon. I sent the screenshot through their secure portal before I even hung up. Then I called his parents. That one took a beat longer. I stared at his father's name on my screen, feeling a strange heaviness settle behind my eyes. When he answered, I didn't explain. I just said, "I need to send you something. What's your email?" He hesitated, asked if everything was okay. I said, "Please, just check it." I sent the image. Let the words speak for themselves. The last call was the most calculated. My husband worked at a mid-sized marketing agency. They were strict, almost obsessive, about workplace relationships. He'd complained before about two people getting fired for violating policy. I pulled up the company website, found the general HR inbox, and composed a simple email. Subject, employee conduct issue, urgent. In the body, I stated facts. No emotion, no accusations. I attached the screenshot and noted that the message had been sent to me by mistake that morning. If the affair involved another employee, I said, they should be aware of a potential policy violation. I sent it. The entire process took less than 30 minutes. Then I drove back to work and finished my day like a machine. Answered emails, returned calls, sat in meetings. My phone stayed silent. Apparently, he hadn't seen my reply yet. I imagined him busy with work, or with her, and felt nothing at all. The attorney meeting that afternoon was efficient. She reviewed the screenshot, nodded once, and said, "This is about as clear as evidence gets. 9 years married, no kids, no interest in counseling." She didn't try to persuade me otherwise, just asked about assets, accounts, the house, told me she could have papers ready by the end of the week. When I got home that evening, his car was in the driveway. He was in the kitchen, cooking dinner, humming softly. He smiled when he saw me. "Hey, how was your day?" "Interesting," I said. He didn't catch it. Kept talking about work, about some client drama. We ate, watched a show. He curled against me on the couch like nothing had changed. I felt hollow, like my body had gone numb to protect itself. Around 9, he went to shower. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The preview lit up the screen. "You're not answering. Everything okay? Did something happen?" Unknown number. Familiar tone. When he came back downstairs, I watched his face as he checked his messages. Relaxed, confused, pale. His fingers moved faster, scrolling, opening sent messages. Then he froze. His eyes went wide. One hand flew to his mouth. "Oh God," he whispered. I met his gaze. Calm. Still. "Don't bother," I said. "I already sent that text to my lawyer, your parents, and your company's HR." The phone slipped from his hand and hit the floor. "You what?" he asked, voice breaking. "You heard me. That was about 3 hours before you realized you sent it to the wrong person." The tears came fast, mascara streaking, apologies tumbling over each other. "It didn't mean anything. It was a mistake." "Which part?" I asked. "The affair? Or texting me about it?" I stood up. "The guest room is mine now. Divorce papers are getting filed this week. Don't talk to me. Go through lawyers." I walked away and locked the door behind me. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The next morning, I woke before my alarm to the sound of knocking. Soft at first, then louder, more desperate. "Please," his voice came through the door, muffled and strained. "Can we just talk?" I stayed still. My heart beat evenly, almost lazily, like it didn't recognize him anymore. The knocking stopped, replaced by the faint scrape of paper against carpet. Something slid under the door. A letter, several pages thick. I waited until his footsteps retreated down the hallway before picking it up. His handwriting filled the page in tight, uneven lines. Apologies, explanations, promises stacked on top of each other. It meant nothing. "I love you." I panicked. I made a mistake. I didn't finish the first page. I folded the letter once, twice, and dropped it into the trash. At work, I blocked his number. Set filters so his emails forwarded directly to my attorney without ever reaching my inbox. I wasn't interested in his version of events. Not anymore. That afternoon, his father called. He sounded tired, older somehow. "We got what you sent," he said quietly. "We don't know what to say. We're devastated." "I'm sorry," I replied, and meant it. For them, not for him. He asked if there was any chance I'd consider counseling, work through it. I pictured the text again. "Come over Monday night. We'll have the whole place to ourselves." "This wasn't a slip," I said. "It was planned. I'm done." He sighed. "I understand," and I believed him. His mother called later. That conversation was different. She talked about commitment, about how marriage was hard work, about not throwing away 9 years over a mistake. I listened until she finished, then said calmly, "I didn't throw anything away. Your son did." She hung up on me. The following day, he came home early. I was working remotely, sitting at my desk, when he burst into the room without knocking. His face was flushed, eyes wild. "HR pulled me in," he said. "They're investigating. They want to know if it's someone at the company. You ruined everything." I looked up slowly. "You violated company policy," I said. "That's your problem." "This is vindictive," he snapped. "You're trying to destroy me." "No," I said. "I forwarded evidence of your affair to people who needed to know. You destroyed your own life when you hit send." He froze. Then his voice dropped. "I could lose everything." "Yeah," I replied. "How's that feel?" The anger drained from him, replaced by something theatrical. He dropped to his knees, right there on the floor, grabbing at my leg. Please, call HR back. Tell them you misunderstood. I'll end it. Therapy, anything. You'll end it, I said quietly. It should never have started. He screamed then, called me cruel, heartless, said I'd never loved him. He grabbed a picture frame from my desk and hurled it at the wall. Glass shattered across the floor. Get out, I said. This is my house too, he shot back. For now, I said, this room is mine. Get out. He left, sobbing, and locked himself in the bedroom. I put on my headphones and kept working. By the end of the week, my attorney called. The papers were ready. When she asked whether I wanted to serve him personally or use a process server, I didn't hesitate. Use a process server, I said, at his work. She paused. That's aggressive. Good, I replied. I didn't feel guilty. I felt clear. For the first time since that text arrived, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was choosing. Things didn't calm down after that. They accelerated. The weekend hit like a wave I saw coming but couldn't step out of. He didn't come home after the night he threw the picture frame. I later learned he'd gone to stay with his best friend. That was fine by me. The house felt quieter without him. Lighter, even. Like the walls had finally exhaled. Saturday morning, I was halfway through my coffee when the doorbell rang. I didn't expect anyone. When I opened the door, his best friend, one of his closest friends from college, stood there, already mid-stride, already angry. She didn't wait to be invited in. Just walked past me like she belonged there. What is wrong with you? She demanded. One mistake and you're destroying his entire life. I closed the door slowly behind her. My pulse stayed steady. One mistake? I repeated. He's human, she snapped. People mess up. You don't burn everything down because of one bad decision. He's been sleeping with her for months, I said, planning to bring her into this house while I was supposedly out of town. That's not one bad decision. That's a pattern. She crossed her arms. Everyone deserves a second chance. He's upset he got caught, I replied. That's not remorse. That's damage control. She tried a different angle, reminded me of holidays, inside jokes, the early years, the version of him I used to talk about with pride. I let her finish, then said, he killed 9 years of marriage when he chose to step outside it, not me. She called me cold, heartless, said I was punishing him instead of fixing things. No, I said, I'm refusing to clean up a mess I didn't make. She left angry, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I didn't cry after. The following week, the papers were served. At his office, the process server called me afterward to confirm. He said my husband had gone pale, started shaking, and had to leave the building. His boss saw everything. I felt bad for about 3 seconds. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I shouldn't have answered. This is him, a man's voice said. Confident, smooth. I'm the man she's been seeing. We need to talk. No, I said immediately. We don't. Look, he continued, like he was negotiating a contract. This got out of hand. He's losing his job. His marriage is over. His parents won't talk to him. You could have handled this quietly. I actually laughed. I forwarded a text, I said. That's all I did. It's not like that, he insisted. We care about each other. Fascinating, I replied. Lose my number. I hung up and blocked it. A few days later, while I was at work, my Ring doorbell notification lit up my phone. It was him, standing on my porch. He tried his key. It didn't work. I'd changed the locks over the weekend. He knocked, then pounded, then slid down the wall and sat there, crying, head in his hands. I watched from my office chair, detached. He stayed for nearly an hour before leaving. That night, my attorney forwarded me an email from his lawyer. He wanted immediate possession of the house. Claimed I was forcing him into homelessness. My attorney's reply was flawless. Your client has family, friends, and apparently an affair partner. My client purchased the home prior to marriage. Title is solely in her name. She has no claim. That ended that conversation fast. By the end of the week, HR made their decision. He was fired. Not just for the affair. The woman he was seeing worked under him. A direct report. A power imbalance. A liability nightmare. She received a written warning. He lost his job. He called me screaming, hysterical, accusing me of enjoying this. They fired me, he yelled. I have no income, no job. How am I supposed to live? You should have thought of that before you sent that text, I said. You're destroying my life. No, I said again. You did. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences. He threatened me then. Said his lawyer would take me for everything. Spousal support, half of everything I owned. Good luck, I said. We have a prenup. I changed my number again that night. But they weren't done. That Friday, security at my office called. Two people were in the lobby asking for me. Him and her. I told security to escort them out. I watched from the window as they were walked out of the building. Him, stiff with embarrassment, her whispering angrily, both of them exposed in a way they never expected to be. Later that evening, his mother texted, "What you're doing is cruel," I replied once. Hard times are illness, loss, tragedy. Sleeping with a subordinate and planning to bring her into our home is betrayal. She didn't respond. By then, the narrative was clear. To them, I was the villain. To me, I was finally free of pretending this was something I could save. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. After the chaos, the calls, the confrontations, the security escorts, there was a stretch of days where nothing happened. No knocks on the door, no angry messages slipping through new numbers, no intermediaries trying to negotiate on his behalf. Just quiet. I thought that would feel like relief. Instead, it felt like standing in the aftermath of a storm, surveying the damage once the adrenaline fades. At night, the house felt too big. Every sound echoed, the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the clock in the hallway. I slept, but not deeply. I'd wake with my heart already awake, my mind replaying moments that now felt unreal. Him laughing on the couch, brushing his teeth beside me, planning a future he was quietly dismantling behind my back. This was the part no one warned me about. The moment after the anger burns out. The moment when you're no longer reacting, no longer fighting, and you're left alone with what you lost. Not the person, but the belief. I didn't miss him. That realization came with its own sharp sting. I missed the version of my life where I didn't question my reality, where trust wasn't something I had to rebuild from rubble, where my instincts didn't feel like liabilities. One night, I sat on the bedroom floor, back against the bed I'd claimed as mine, staring at a small pile of things I hadn't moved yet. His watch, a framed photo from our 3rd anniversary, a hoodie I used to steal when the house was cold. I picked up the photo. We looked happy, not staged happy, comfortable happy, the kind of happiness you earn over time. And that's when it hit me. If someone could lie that convincingly, live inside a marriage for years while planning betrayals with this level of ease, then what did that say about my judgment? That question hollowed me out. I wondered how many moments had been fake, how many smiles had been rehearsed, whether the woman in those photos had been the only one in the relationship who believed the story she was living. For the first time since the text, my hands shook. Not from fear, from grief. I cried then, not the dramatic kind, not the sobbing collapse people imagine, but quiet, breathless tears that soaked into the carpet while my shoulders trembled. I cried for the future I thought I had, for the years I couldn't get back, for the part of myself that trusted without keeping score. And underneath all of it, there was something darker. Doubt. What if everyone was right? What if I had gone too far? What if I had confronted him privately, demanded therapy, kept HR out of it? Would I be sleeping in a shared bed right now, convincing myself things could still be fixed? The thought made my chest tighten. Then another memory surfaced uninvited. The text. Come over Monday night. We'll have the whole place to ourselves. My place. My life. My marriage. And the doubt evaporated. I realized something in that moment, sitting alone on the floor, surrounded by the remains of a relationship that only I had been honoring. This wasn't my lowest point because I'd destroyed something. It was my lowest point because I was finally seeing clearly how alone I'd been inside that marriage. That clarity hurt more than rage ever could. But it also marked the end of something else. The end of self-blame. The shift didn't come with a dramatic realization or a sudden burst of strength. It came quietly. The morning after I sat on the floor and cried, I woke up with a strange sense of stillness in my chest. Not numbness, clarity. The kind that settles in once you stop arguing with reality. I stopped asking what if. I started asking what now. The first thing I did was clear the house. Not aggressively, not symbolically, just deliberately. I boxed up his things room by room, labeling each box with a steadiness that surprised me. Shirts folded, shoes paired, papers stacked. I didn't rush. I didn't linger either. This wasn't revenge. It was reclaiming space. When my attorney called later that day to go over timelines, something in her tone shifted. She wasn't managing a crisis anymore. She was coordinating an exit. The prenup was airtight. His parents had insisted on it years ago, ironically, to protect me. There was an infidelity clause. Explicit, unambiguous. The text message would stand as Exhibit A. The house remained mine. Accounts stayed separate. No spousal support. I felt something loosen in my shoulders as she spoke. For the first time, the future stopped looking like a battlefield. A few days later, he tried one last angle. He showed up outside my office building with her. Security called me before letting them anywhere near the elevators. I stood by the window, watching them through the glass. He looked smaller than I remembered, shoulders hunched, jaw tight. She stood close to him, hand on his arm, whispering something urgent. I told security to escort them out. I didn't go downstairs. I didn't speak to them. I didn't know either of them another word. That was the moment I understood something important. Power doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from refusal. The refusal to engage. The refusal to explain yourself to people who already decided their comfort mattered more than your truth. The refusal to be pulled back into chaos just because someone else can't sit with the consequences of their choices. The court date came faster than I expected. He arrived with his attorney, his mother, and, unbelievably, the woman he'd been seeing. Seeing her there felt surreal, like watching someone walk into the wrong movie halfway through. She avoided my eyes. He didn't. Inside the courtroom, the facts did all the talking. The judge read the text slowly, asked clarifying questions, looked at him, then at me. "So," the judge said evenly, "you accidentally sent this to your wife?" "Yes," he said, voice thin. "But—" "And you were planning to bring the affair partner into the marital home while representing you would be out of town?" Silence. His attorney tried pivoting, argued that I'd weaponized the text by forwarding it to his employer. The judge shut that down immediately. "Forwarding evidence to relevant parties isn't weaponization," he said. "If an employer took action, that's between them and the employee." 40 minutes. That's all it took. No spousal support. Assets split per prenup. House remains mine. Each party pays their own legal fees. His mother cried. His attorney looked angry. The woman beside him stared straight ahead, rigid, like she'd just realized the cost of the man she chose. Outside the courtroom, he tried one last time. Mascara streaked his face, his voice cracked. "I hope you're happy," he said. "You destroyed my entire life over a mistake." I looked at him, not with anger, not with satisfaction, but with finality. "You destroyed your life," I said. "I just refused to go down with you." I walked away without waiting for a response. And for the first time since that Tuesday morning, my heart felt light enough to breathe. After the ruling, the world didn't snap back into place. It settled. Slowly, unevenly, like dust after a collapse. The first few days were quiet, in a way that felt earned. No more lawyers calling with urgent questions. No more unexpected numbers lighting up my phone. The house, my house, felt different now. Not haunted, not empty, just neutral. Like a space waiting to be redefined. His parents cut contact completely after court. I didn't hear it directly, but mutual acquaintances mentioned it in hushed tones. They were embarrassed, angry, disappointed. Whatever they felt, they kept it to themselves. And honestly, I didn't need closure from them. Their silence was enough. His best friend tried one more time. She cornered me at my gym a week later, catching me after a workout when my guard was low and my hair was still damp with sweat. She didn't yell this time. She sounded tired. "He's on my couch," she said. "No job, no money, barely sleeping. He's not eating. You have to help him." I met her eyes steady. "No," I said. "I don't." She stared at me like she was searching for something. Remorse, maybe. Softness. Guilt. "You spent 9 years together," she pressed. "How can you be so cold?" I took a breath, felt my pulse. Calm. "I'm not cold," I said. "I'm done." She shook her head, muttered something about how people don't forgive anymore, how everyone wants blood. I let her talk herself out. When she finally left, I finished stretching and went home. I didn't feel shaken. I felt resolved. Online, the narrative shifted the way it always does. Vague posts about narcissistic exes, about cruelty disguised as self-respect, about people who can't forgive mistakes. No names, no tags. I didn't respond. He moved in with her. That detail came through mutual friends who thought I should know, as if it might sting. It didn't. They were sharing a one-bedroom apartment. He was scrambling for work. She was still employed, technically, but her name was now attached to an ethics investigation, and it showed. Jobs didn't come easily after that. I focused on my own life. I repainted the bedroom, got rid of furniture he'd picked out, changed the layout of the living room. Small choices, but each one reinforced something important. I wasn't rebuilding. I was redesigning. Work improved too. Without the constant low-level tension of being lied to, I had more energy than I'd realized I was missing. I stayed late by choice, not obligation. Took on projects I'd previously avoided. A month later, my manager called me in and told me I was being promoted. I walked back to my desk with a strange smile on my face. It wasn't revenge. It was alignment. I started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I didn't want to carry mistrust into whatever came next. Some sessions were quiet, others hit hard. The biggest realization came early on. I didn't miss him. I missed who I thought he was. That distinction mattered. Weeks passed, then months. One afternoon, I met someone new for coffee. Nothing dramatic, no sparks flying, just easy conversation and honest laughter. At one point, he asked about my ex. I gave him the short version. He sent the affair text to you by accident? He asked, incredulous. Yes. And you forwarded it to his employer? It seemed appropriate. He laughed. That's savage. I respect it. I didn't promise anything. Neither did he. It was just nice, talking to someone who wasn't hiding. Sometimes people asked if I regretted how I handled things. The speed, the decisiveness, the lack of mercy. The answer was always the same. No. He wasn't sorry about the affair. He was sorry he got caught. Every conversation after proved that. He wanted me to absorb the consequences for him, to make it all okay. I refused, and that refusal changed everything. People keep asking what the lesson is, like this story needs a moral wrapped neatly at the end. Here's the truth. There was no grand revenge, no elaborate plan, no moment where I stood over the ruins of his life feeling victorious. There was just a choice. When that text landed on my phone, clear, undeniable, written in his own words, I was handed something rare, certainty. No gaslighting, no confusion, no room for alternate explanations, just proof. I used it. Not to hurt him, but to protect myself. That distinction matters. Could I have confronted him privately? Yes. Could I have demanded therapy, begged for honesty, tried to save 9 years? Maybe. But saving a marriage requires two people who are telling the truth. He wasn't. What he wanted wasn't forgiveness. It was insulation. From consequences, from accountability, from the discomfort of his own choices. He wanted me to soften the landing after he'd already pushed us off the edge. I refused. And that refusal is what people struggle with the most. Because we've been taught that love means endurance. That commitment means absorbing damage. That strength looks like staying. Sometimes strength is leaving without screaming. Sometimes dignity is choosing speed over spectacle. Sometimes self-respect is forwarding a message exactly as it was written and letting gravity do the rest. Life now is quieter. No lies to untangle. No stories to cross-check. No tension humming under the surface of ordinary days. I wake up in a house that feels honest. I work without distraction. I laugh without wondering who else is receiving the same smile. I don't feel cold. I feel clear. If there's a lesson here, it's not about punishment or pride. It's this. You are not required to protect someone from the consequences of betraying you. You are not obligated to negotiate with proof. And you don't owe grace to someone who chose deception over loyalty. He sent the wrong text to the wrong person. Everything that followed wasn't cruelty. It was reality.